What's up, comic and pop culture fans? This is James with Mint Hunter Comics, and today I've probably got one of the best mint hunting tips for you, and that is to watch out for comic books based off of video games. They are rising! As a comic book and video game dude, it's the best of both worlds, and they've been colliding for a while now, and as people start to appreciate comics more, and as HBO and other networks start to pick up The Last of Us, God of War, whatever have you for the newest TV show, you are going to start to see the comic book equivalents of those characters go up. So what we're going to do today is share my thoughts, my opinions, and data on video game-based comic books that you might want to keep on your radar. So I think you probably are aware that popular character equivalents in comic books probably might collect some bit of a value, but maybe you didn't have any idea. Well, I do, so I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. Interestingly, it's not applicable for all characters. Like the first Pokemon in comics isn't outrageously valuable. It's like a $15, $20 book. But then you have like Uncharted 1, which is like a $50, $60 book. It's a little bit random, and I think part of that is because people have so much heart and soul into one certain product or IP that they plug all their money and thought into it. For example, Legend of Zelda #1 from just 1990, not even that old, mind you, goes for $300 raw, and if you can squeeze a 9.8 out of it, you're talking $1,500. Oh, and there's a more rare version where it doesn't say the price of the comic. As awareness begins to rise about this, we will be seeing this go up. This has been a little bit of an untapped market for the longest time. Combine the fact with a lot of these books are incredibly more scarce than DC or Marvel books, you're left with some stuff that's pretty valuable just already. Let's just talk about Tomb Raider. Classic stuff right there. Well, the comic book equivalents are usually like $5 books if you find them. But if you find the Adam Hughes covers, they're borderline $30, $40, sometimes $50 books each time you see them. Now, granted, that might just be Adam Hughes' gorgeous cover taking over the reins there, but other artists too, with Lara Croft, command quite a value. I did see that her first appearance, which is in Tomb Raider / Witchblade #1, is up to $300 if you can get a CGC graded 9.8 out of that book. Not too shabby. Part of me also thought, well, this has to be all the Nintendo stuff. Obviously, we're talking Mario, Link, whatever have you. Actually, it's kind of all over the place. Look at Bloodborne. I mean, that is an unbelievably isolating game. It was incredibly difficult. It has an incredible cult following, but it's also not for kids. I mean, not as many people played this as are going to play Mario. But nonetheless, we got Bloodborne #1. It's barely a 6-year-old comic, and just #1, it's a $50 book if you can get the one specific variant that I've got shown here. If you can get that graded in a 9.8, the fair market value, once again, is $300. That's pretty incredible for Bloodborne, and that just goes to show you how deep and passionate the fans were about that particular game. There is a buyer's market out there, and frankly, some of the stuff, there's just not that much of. Look at this next one. Halo, the graphic novel preview, #1, is the first Halo in comics. They made a graphic novel, and this was the preview, which was like a portion of it that came out before. Well, that's actually like a $60, $70 book if you've got it in that really nice, gradable high grade. If you do take the time to get it graded, you can get up to around $500 if you can pull out the perfect 9.8 for that book. I gotta tell you, there's not that many of them out there, but that's pretty impressive. Here's another random one for you. Assassin's Creed #1. It was another sort of promo situation. It's another one of those, if you have the super highest of the raws, like perfect looking raw, you're gonna be able to get probably $60 out of that book. Now, I was not able to find any sales data for it. I think the only one I saw was a 9.6, so a 9.8 isn't even existing yet. Look how untapped this market is. Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm going to be keeping an eye out for popular characters showing up in comics in the future more, and I think you will too. So we got Dead Space #1, $75 raw, $300 in a 9.8. We got The Witcher 1, $75 raw, $350 if you can squeeze a 9.8. How about Mega Man 55? Notice how I didn't say number 1. 55 is the Archie series where it was the final end of the run. They were so scarce they make the Sonic run look like the Jim Lee X-Men run. There's like practically none of these, right? By the end of the run, there really was not that much. Well, the variant of Mega Man 55 is actually $100 just for being the last issue of the run. Wasn't even able to find any slab data for that one. How about God of War? Speaking of another book that in high grade is now $100, and speaking of another book that just got optioned for a TV show, and the game that just came out has been highly, highly, highly popular. If you have it in a 9.8, it's actually about a $330 book. Not too bad. Metal Gear Solid, number 1. There's a regular, there's a promo, and there's a 1 in 25. The 1 in 25 of the first Snake in comics is going to run you about $200, just raw, not even graded. If you go ahead and get it graded, it's going to cost you $950. Let's just call it $1,000. That's pretty wild, but it makes kind of sense to me. I mean, how many of those are there? Not much, man. Fans of the Metal Gear Solid franchise, and that is a wildly popularized franchise, know and want that book. Resident Evil 1, let's keep it pretty scarce here. So we're just going to stick with regular Resident Evil number 1. That's like, it's still so scarce that it's a $200 book. These are some of the higher raw values of modern, like newer books in general, 90s, 2000s stuff. But I do have some slab data for that. So yeah, $1,300 if you have a 9.8. There's not many out there. Most of them are lower grade, but $1,300 for the first comic book appearance of Resident Evil. Wow. And these are the prices now where the eye isn't really on it. And video games are only getting more popular. Those characters and IPs are only getting more popular. And we're seeing shows starting to be announced that are going to come out. You better keep an eye on these books, man. Last of Us, American Dream. Here's a comic I want, but I've pretty much all given up because it's like a $300 book for that cream of the crop grade. And unfortunately, I want a 9.8. I really do. But a 9.8 is $1,400. First appearance, well, first comic book version of Last of Us, but it's actually a prequel story. I have read it, but I do not own it. I would love to have it, and I don't think it's going to happen. And that's the thing. People that get into the video games, some of them have some pretty deep pockets, and the Last of Us maniacs out there, like myself, want that. So it's there. Sonic the Hedgehog number 1. There's an incredible amount of Sonic keys that are valuable. Sonic 98. Which version of Sonic number 1 are we talking about here? But I'm going with the 7-inch promo edition that came out a little bit before the actual Sonic number 1. It's pretty rare. There was actually a gentleman that just messaged me a picture of it in my Instagram DMs. But that's worth about $300. I have no slab data at all. Can't put it together. It's fairly scarce. Now, Sonic number 1, the regular Archie series, was pretty popular. So you'll see Sonic ones out there. But that particular Sonic one, yikes. Also, keep an eye out because DC included a 16-page promotional of Sonic around that time, and it was only in a couple issues, and it boosts those kind of nothing DC comics up to like just $20 just for having them in there. Keep an eye out for them. Okay, next up we got Mortal Kombat Collector's Edition number 1. Let's start talking the real money, because now we're in it. This is the first Mortal Kombat comic book. Not many out there. If you've got a cream of the crop, I'm talking no spine ticks, you're gonna pay $400, maybe even all the way up to $500. The slabbed data puts a 9.8 FMV around $2,000. $2,000. You can, that's more expensive than an ASM 252 in 9.8. So that just goes to show you the weight that these carry. How about Doom Knee Deep in the Dead, number 1. You got to keep an eye out because there's certain giveaways that show you if it really is the number 1. I think it's the 1 is or isn't italicized, and there's a black bar at the top that talks about what it is. Highly rare book. And Doom was one of the biggest video games ever when it came out. And the comic book equivalent, first appearance, nobody picked it up. So it's worth $500 if you've got it and it's super crisp. $500, man. I was pretty shocked by that one. Oh, and if you've got a 9.8, you're probably going to be able to get $3,000 for it. What else is $3,000? I'm pretty sure like a Daredevil 1 3.0 is $3,000. So you could get the first appearance of Daredevil, or you can get the first appearance of Doom in comics. Pretty crazy, man. Pretty crazy. All right, let's keep talking real money here. Super Mario Bros. number 1. It's not Mario's first appearance, but it is the first Mario Bros. Comic ever. $500 as the highest of the high grades if you've got the cream of the crop. And it's got a slab data of about 2,100, let's round down to 2,000. Believe it or not, there actually are ones out there. People started collecting that one, so you can find it, but it also has a lot of key significance, so that's why the value is still so high. Unlike this next one, which is a little more scarce, which is Blip number 1. You've probably seen that cover. It's been tossed around out there because it's such a big deal, but maybe you didn't know what it was. That's the first appearance of Mario, and I think maybe Bowser. Don't quote me on that, I'll have to check, but it is wildly valuable. First appearance of Mario, you guessed it, it's probably going to make some real money. It's worth about anywhere from the $700 to $800 range. It's not impossible for me to imagine someone charging $1,000 if it's basically perfect. Chef's kiss, cream of the crop, best out there. That's the pricing you're looking at. Well, the graded copy of a Blip number 1, if you got a 9.8 out of that, it's like $3,500. $3,500. And it actually gets more ridiculous. Nintendo Comics System Sneak Preview, which is actually, it's a many things, but it's also the first appearance of Link in comics from Legend of Zelda. Same thing as before, it's about an $800 book. Not impossible to me that if the book didn't have even a bindery tear, if it was perfect, you could maybe get away with charging $1,000 for that book. Same situation, if you happen to be able to get a 9.8 out of it, you're probably sitting at something like $3,500 to about $4,000 right there. You can buy cars for that. Next up and last one on the list, just to really show you how ridiculous these can get without even being like a rare incentive variant or anything like that. Just some of the value of some of this stuff. Maximum Carnage, number 1. If it's high grade, $1,000. It just is $1,000. There's no spine ticks, you better believe you're spending $1,000 on that book. This came with the Maximum Carnage video game. You had to buy a copy of the game, and I think maybe it was included. And it included like a snippet of Spider-Man Unlimited number 1. But it's the cover that's iconic. It's how many of these that are left that are in good condition, which makes it really tough. I actually did a submission for Buddy, and unfortunately I should have had it sent to me, but I had it sent back to him. And he got, I want to say a 9.6 and a 9.2. That's crazy, because a 9.8, the value, somehow for Maximum Carnage 1, a 9.8 is more than Blip number 1 and more than Nintendo Comics System Sneak Preview. It's at a comfortable $5,000. I say comfortable meaning it can and will likely go up from that. So just to give you an idea, that's pretty crazy. Maximum Carnage number 1. That's one of the more famous ones. A lot of people know about that one because of how rare it is. All the ones I've mentioned, the list goes further. I just didn't get the data for it. Gears of War 1, Game Boy 1, Jedi Fallen Order, Dark Temple 1, Earthworm Jim, Ratchet and Clank, Duke Nukem Forever, Uncharted 1, Sly Cooper 1, Nintendo Comic System 1, Alien Isolation #1. Keep a freaking eye out for these books, man. I'm telling you, these prices seem high, but they're only gonna get higher. The video game stuff is pretty freaking untapped. The Marvel comics, everyone's talking about them. Everybody's starting to get an idea about them, but the video game stuff is pretty unknown still. If you're lucky enough to have some of these more scarcer comics and their first appearance counterparts, you've got some really cool stuff. Maybe you hold on to it. Keep it as a little bit of a savings plan. These are awesome, awesome books that don't get enough traction. I think that this is going to be the future of modern value, I believe. I think this is probably more stable than speculating on certain keys that might fall apart, certain characters that don't wind up in the MCU. I feel like the real value from moderns rests in these frickin' video game ones, man. I really do. And that's a secret I've had for a little while, but I think it is time to share to the masses. What comics did I miss in my data? Do you agree that you think that this is a safer investment than something like a first appearance of Spider-Gwen or something other big like that? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, guys, a lot of research went into this. Consider liking and subscribing, and watch out for that join members, because I'm going to be doing exclusive giveaways almost weekly from this point on. And keep on hunting.